Yeah, UFC 305. This is gonna be the breakdown for the entire card, bar the main event. Yeah, separate video on that one. But yeah, the first fight of the night was Stuart Nickel versus Jesus Aguilar. It was Nickel's debut. You know, you think he had a home court advantage. We said during the prediction video that Nickel was probably the better wrestler. Um, but I don't know what he was thinking. From what I can remember from the fight, it looked like he was going for a rear naked choke. Aguilar was kind of hunched over, but Nickel kind of just forgot to get his hooks in. And he kind of just slid down Aguilar's back like a water slide. And from that, Aguilar managed to lock in that guillotine, and he got a nasty torque on it. You can see his bicep was literally popping out. And when he was screaming at the ref saying, "Look, this guy's asleep. He's I don't know what he was saying because I don't speak Spanish, but I could pretty much tell what he was saying to the ref." And when the ref did go to raise Nickel's hand, I didn't think Nickel was asleep because I saw him make a fist. But then when he called the fight off and he rolled Nickel over and Nickel was doing the flipping Undertaker with his eyes rolled back, I was like, oh my god. Aguilar killed him. Nickel on his debut. Might not come back to the UFC again. But yeah, and for that, I mean, we both predicted a nickel for that fight. So starting the night off with the 0-1 for predictions, it wasn't looking good. But yeah, it was a good win for Aguilar, and yeah, looking forward to seeing him again. Why not? But yeah, moving on to our next fight, Son Kenan versus Ricky Glenn. This was a scrap and a half. I chose Son Kenan to win this fight, and I thought he would knock Ricky Glenn out. And I underestimated Glenn's toughness and his chin because he ate some big shots during this fight. Within the first 10 seconds of round one, Ricky Glenn was actually the one to knock Son Kenan down. If I remember, I think it was a big overhand, and it dropped Son Kenan. But Kenan also got a knockdown of his own. I think it was in the second round. Yeah, I mean, both of them were kind of had a scrap in that first round, and when Ricky Glenn realized that he just couldn't compete on the feet, he decided to go to the wrestling, to the grappling. But Kenan was just too big, too strong. Ricky Glenn got this disgusting cyst on his forehead. Well, a la blimmin' Joanna, Jan Jacek. It was disgusting. He looked like an alien, man. He looks like he was about to give birth out of his flipping skull. And Son Kenan landed some nice elbows in the clinch, some big shots. Gotta give it to Ricky Glenn because he got dusted by both Dobo and Giagos via the left hook. So I saw Son Kenan drop Ian Gary with that same left hook, and I really thought he would knock Ricky Glenn out. But regardless, he got the unanimous decision, and it was a dominant performance for Son Kenan. So moving on to the next bout. This was probably the worst fight of the early prelims. Tom Nolan versus Alex Reyes. Dominic Reyes' brother. He's let his younger brother down. I mean, you could tell Alex Reyes is 37 and he hasn't won a fight since 2017. But he was a tough guy. Nolan went into the fight. I think it was with like minus 1200, minus 1200 favor or something like that. He's a big guy, a long guy. He was landing. I like the elbows that he was landing. Even though not a single one of them cut Reyes open. I don't think the performance was great from Tom Nolan, if I'm being completely honest. He's got a lot of holes in his game. He was, too easily hit, I feel like. He didn't keep the fight at range as much as I would have liked to have seen from him. He let Alex Reyes get off a bit too much offense than I think he should have let him, to be honest. I really thought Nolan was gonna pick Reyes apart and potentially knock him out, but I mean that wasn't to be. He still got the unanimous decision, but I think Tom Nolan probably should have performed a little bit better than he did. But yeah, he still got the unanimous decision victory. And Alex Reyes, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe it's time to call it quits. He is a super tough guy. He's got a good chin, but that's not really what you want to be known for, is it? And speaking of guys you don't want to be known for, certain things, we want to Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns, and Herbert Burns. My prediction for this fight, yeah, and I've got it literally written here: Jack Jenkins win, and I've got in brackets Herbert Burns tapping to strikes like Tristan Tate. Now that's not exactly what happened, but Herbert Burns he pretty much gave up. Yeah, Jack Jenkins was going into the fight minus 800 favorite. I also said during my prediction it feels like Dana was just feeding bums, throwing them into the fire. Burns hasn't had a win since 2020. He heavily relies on his BJJ. He just did not look comfortable on the feet. Jack Jenkins was ripping that lead leg apart. I mean, he's just absolutely destroying that lead leg. There was a lot of attention on leg kicks this card actually, which is great to see because I feel like it's a shot that's underappreciated, even though it is super effective. But Herbert Burns just looked bad. He looked terrible. He just looked bad. He wasn't very good on the feet. You know, his back was constantly up against the cage. He wasn't checking the kicks he wasn't checking the kicks at all, and you know, he kind of just dropped to his back at every possible opportunity and was pleading for Jenkins to come into his guard so he could utilize his BJJ, but it just didn't work for him. And then the fight ended with Jenkins dropping him. Was it with a kick, or I really can't remember if it was a shot to the head or if it was a kick. But regardless, I mean, Burns' leg just collapsed from underneath him, and it looked like he was, trying to, be a hero and get back up. But I just don't think he wanted any of it anymore. And we saw a picture, after the fight. Gilbert Burns picked him up like he picks up his wife and carried him out the arena. It was bad from Herbert Burns. I think Herbert Burns maybe needs to look at just forgetting about the UFC, looking at another career, because it was bad. It was bad. Quitting two fights back to back. Yeah, it was bad. Speaking of bad, Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos. Yeah, probably the worst fight of the night. I mean, look, a lot of fighters talk about the path of least resistance. It's clear Luana Santos has never heard that phrase before because, she just decided to stand and bang. When her clearest path to victory was taking O'Neill down and using her BJJ, which is her strength. It just wasn't the greatest of fights, to be honest. Casey O'Neill was just a little more experienced, a little bit better on the feet. She even managed to take Luana Santos' back in that third round. Obviously, she didn't even look close to getting that submission off, but it was just a dominant display from Casey O'Neill, winning all the exchanges, getting Luana Santos' back. And look, I know Luana Santos is young, she's 24, but I think she needs to develop that overall game. And look, if she's going to rely on her BJJ, then maybe she needs to actually try and shoot for a takedown, because I didn't see her shoot for a takedown, not even once during that fight. Probably the worst fight of the night for me, personally. But yeah, let's move on to our next fight. Josh Culibao versus Ricardo Ramos. Or should I say Josh Culibao versus Josh Culibao, because Josh Culibao defeated Josh Culibao tonight. Look, Josh Culibao did all the hard work in that first round. Landed a nasty leg kick in that first round. But then he just got super overzealous. He went to land another wild leg kick, but Ramos just moved his leg out of the way right in time, and Culibao literally did a 180 due to the momentum of him throwing that leg kick, and he gave up his back to Ramos. Yeah, and Ramos pretty much just stayed on his back for the entire round, for the entirety of that first round. After he did get that takedown, the second round, I think Kulabal got excessively excited by the fact that he did drop him with that, or hurt him with that leg kick in that first round, and he was over relying on that leg kick again in that second round. He wasn't really setting it up. He was kind of just blasting a leg kick. He started messing around. He started doing like all these pirouettes and nonsense and flipping anime stances and all these things, man. Just straight foolishness. He had to go back to his corner, and his coach had to tell him, "Listen, stop dicking around. It's like, you still haven't won this fight." And in that third round, I think Kulabal really, really let himself down. His coach also told him, "Look, make sure you keep those hands high." This guy Ricardo Ramos, he's headhunting, and Kulabal once again just didn't listen to his coaches. His hands were low. Ramos was getting the better of the exchanges in that final round, and he managed to take it by decision, rightfully so. I think Kulabal let himself down. After he hurt Ricardo Ramos with that leg kick, he should have been setting up that kick in the second and third round. He should have been mixing it up, going to the head, going to the leg. It was bad. It was really, really bad. I mean, even in that second round, it looked like he dropped Ramos. And Ramos was sitting there waiting for Kulabal to come into his guard. Kulabal could have stood him up pretty much straight away. I don't know why he didn't. He was getting the better of the exchanges in that second round, and he had him hurt with that leg kick from the first round. But instead, he tried to land some meaty ground and pound for like a minute and a half, and he could have been using that time better. But yeah, Kulabal was his own enemy that fight, and he's the reason that he lost that fight. But well done to Ramos. He got the takedown late in that third round, and he did what he needed to do to win that fight. And moving on to the headline of the prelims, and this one at first I thought was controversial. Junior Tafa versus Volta Walker. I think the fight started off how a lot of us expected it to. Tafa gaining Walker's respect. Walker was very, very, very scared of Tafa's power. I think once he felt that first right hand, he was like, "Yeah, I need to take this guy down, bro. Otherwise, I am finished." I mean, Tafa kind of, he went into the pocket, started throwing some nice shots. I believe he's going into the fight. He had, what was it, like an 80% like takedown defense. But like I said during the predictions, I thought Walker was gonna be super relentless with his takedowns, and he was. I mean, he held on to those legs for dear life. Tafa did cut Walker open, but Walker managed to take him down. And these heavyweights, once they take you down, I mean, it's done. You're not getting up from a flipping 260-pound block of lard just sitting on top of you. There's nothing you can do. Now the finish. So it was a heel hook. I didn't hear the scream initially. I thought, wow, Tafa's tapped. We go back to the replay, and we see Tafa didn't tap, and he didn't verbally tap. He just screamed. Now initially I thought, okay, he screamed, but he didn't tap. But then I also thought, look, if the referee doesn't stop the fight and Walker does some serious damage to Tafa's heel, he could do potentially some ligament damage or whatever it is, then that's gonna become the referee's responsibility. That's the referee might have just put Tafa out for however long because he didn't stop the fight. And then we get word that from an official that it turns out in the actual rule book, a scream is noted down to be a verbal tap. So fair enough. And Taffa's behavior, yeah, after getting submitted was absolutely shambolic. He went up to Walker and he slapped him. He gave him the finger when the decision was being read out. But Walker got his own back, not only by beating Taffa, but in the post-fight interview, he mentioned taking out Taffa's bloodline and going after his brother. Fair enough. The Walker brothers got the better of the Taffa brothers, and then we saw a video of Johnny Walker doing a backflip off his yacht after watching his brother get the victory. So fair enough. There were five brothers fighting on this card. Taffa, Walker, who else was there? Burns, and I can't remember the others. But yeah, it's just an interesting fact. Moving on to the main card. The fight that kicked off the main card. Wow. Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. What a performance. I'd probably say my performance of the night. Carlos Prates. Never seen Li Jingliang knocked out until tonight. Li Jingliang, look, I think it's time to auction that suit, because we're never going to see you wear it, fella. Yeah. Just been knocked out, God knows the next time you're gonna be at a big press conference, or you probably should have been at this event's press conference, but yeah, just that suit's never gonna see the light of day. But yeah, Carlos Prates, wow, he just looked so good. As soon as he got comfortable on the feet, he started throwing some wild shots. He started getting super creative. And the combination, to finish Lee. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a right hook and the left hook that followed. And yeah, I thought Lee was dead. I thought he was dead. Prates knocked him out. And then, we see him celebrating. The camera cuts back to Lee like 5 minutes later, and he's still snoring. I thought he was dead. It was a brilliant performance by Prates, and even more impressive finish. And it's good to see some new exciting blood in the welterweight division, considering it's a division, plagued by old age and guys that have been around for a long time. Guys like Kamaru Usman and Kobe Covington and Wonderboy. It's great to see guys like Prates, who are starting to make a name for themselves. He speaks English as well, which is going to help him build his brand. Not only that, but he said, he wants to buy a house, so he wants one more fight, UFC 310. Hopefully Dana gets in that fight. I'd love to see him again, man. Super exciting fighter, super dangerous. And yeah, I mean, Li Jingliang, yeah, I can understand why he looks so old, only the age of 36. The guy, he's just a punching bag sometimes, and he was a punching bag tonight for Prates. Well, yeah, let's move on to the next fight. Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I thought I was mental for predicting Rozenstruik via decision. Yeah, I think it was the only heavyweight bout on the card, and the only heavyweight bout of the card you'd think we'd see a knockout. I even saw the odds. I think it was minus 680 for the fight not going to the distance, but it went the distance. Rozenstruik literally followed his game plan to the T with absolute perfection. He said it yesterday at the press conference. He said, "Look, I'm not going to trade. I'm going to stay on the outside. I'm going to pick my shots." That's exactly what he did. He picked his shots through some lovely 1-2, some great leg kicks. I felt like Tuivasa would have to literally just throw the kitchen sink in order to win this fight and try to go get a Hail Mary knockout. But he wasn't aggressive enough, I think. Even in that third round, I'm sure he knew he was down 2 rounds. Yeah. He just still did not throw everything that he possibly had at Rozenstruik to win the fight. Rozenstruik threw some great leg kicks. He countered Tuivasa when he did come in, try to throw that big overhand right. It was just pitch perfect performance from Rozenstruik. And Dana White, well done. Yeah. well done for taking Tuivas's mum off that judging table. Yeah, 30-27. Yeah, she gave to her son. 30-27 when he barely landed a clean punch. Thank God. Yeah, I mean, look, the co-main event didn't even need anyone judging it, but thank God that person was not there. I forgot what his name was. What, Michael Poof? Was that? No, I can't remember his name. Had an absolute stinker. 30-27, absolutely mental. I hope Dana White does that more going forward, so we'll stop getting, judges flipping messing around and giving it to their hometown fighter and whatnot. They need to add that in football as well. Anthony Taylor giving a flipping penalty against Arsenal because Saka blew on the player's neck or something. We need that in football as well. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next fight. Matthias Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. Oh wow, Dan Hooker surprised me. He really surprised me this fight. Once again, a great game plan. In this fight, Hooker actually managed to decentivize Gamrot from going for the takedown. Through two things. Number one, Hooker always went for that guillotine. Those long spider-like limbs, man. I mean, every time Gamrot went for that takedown, Hooker was looking for the neck. And he managed to get it a few times, and Gamrot had to defend, and he did successfully defend, but, that's not what you want to keep doing, and knowing that the risk is there, you don't want to keep going for the takedown. Number two, Hooker would just get back up to his feet. He defended really well. He attacked the hands, and he knew that Gamrot would get tired from shooting those takedowns. He even said it during fight week. He also said during fight week that he would win the exchanges on the feet, and he will win the fight on the feet, and that's exactly what happened. I think both fighters ended up dropping each other during this fight. Gamrot in the first, and I think Hooker in the second. I can't really remember, but yeah, bloodbath. I mean, Hooker was it looked like both his eyelids were cut and his cheek was cut. After the second round, the guy is a crackhead. You're sitting there, his face just got punched in. He's got cuts everywhere, bleeding, and he's sitting there smiling. Yeah, I mean, Gamrot's striking definitely improved since the last time we saw him fight. He looked much more comfortable on the feet, but Hooker, I feel like, was always gonna win the fight if it stayed on the feet, and that's exactly what happened. He was landing the better combinations. He had the size, the power advantage, and even though the risk of the guillotine was always there, with Hooker against Gamrot, when Gamrot did go for the takedown, I think that was his route to victory. I think he, just like in the second round when he did take Hooker down and he managed to control him from side control, it wasn't the most, entertaining way to win the round. And that's what a lot of fans have said. He's even acknowledged it. He said, look, the fans need to stop calling me boring. I think he went over to Dominic Reyes and said, look, am I a boring fighter now or whatever? He just needs to get that out of his head, stop thinking about what the fans think and whatnot. And he needs to do what's going to win him the fight. If the fans think he's boring, okay, no problem. The fans are called Bilal Muhammad boring. He didn't change his style, and look at him now. He's the champion of the welterweight division. So Gamrot needs to get what the fans are saying out of his head and whatnot, and just do what he needs to do to win. But yeah, I mean, I think majority predicted Gamrot to win this fight, but Hooker really surprised me, by decentivizing Gamrot. He was leaning over that lead leg. He was he was standing up straight as well. Standing straight up, not worried about that takedown. If that takedown did come, he knew he was going to get straight back up, or he could potentially even submit Gamrot. So it was super impressive, and a fearless performance from Dan Hooker as well, not being threatened by Gamrot's biggest strength. And I did think, I thought Gamrot did enough when they read out the decision, but damage is king when it comes to deciding who you want to fight, and Dan Hooker did more damage. So rightly so. I guess he got the win, and now he's back in the rankings. He's just be a top 5 guy. Who could you put him up against next? I don't know. It feels like he's fought everyone in that division, and he's taking a battering from everyone. I don't know. Maybe Poirier again. Poirier said he's gonna have one more fight. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But yeah, moving on to the co-main event. Wow. Kai Kara-France versus Steve Erceg. We haven't seen Kai Kara-France since the beginning of 2023. They lost to Amir Albazi. You know, arguably he won that fight. Yeah, Kai Kara-France, he entered flow state for this fight. I mean, he came into the octagon straight face. He was looking mean. He was looking angry. And when I was talking about this fight on the prediction video, the first thing I said was that it was a tough fight to call. I think, and I wish I said Kai Kara-France because I pretty much called what he was gonna do. I'm sure Kai Kara-France watched the Erceg Pantoja fight and saw the success that Pantoja had in that fight with the blitzing in on Steve Erceg. It was only, I think, the second round where Erceg was managing to catch Pantoja on the way in with his blitzes. He was landing some nice left hooks and even some elbows. The elbow was the shot that actually cut Pantoja open. But Kai Kara-France was faster than even Pantoja, and definitely more powerful. Erceg just couldn't catch on to the timing of those blitzes, and it seemed like a matter of time before Kai Kara-France would land one of those big shots, whether it was overhand right or overhand left or whatever. And it was going to be about how Erceg was going to handle it, and he did not handle it very well at all. Yeah, it was a beautiful shot. It was almost like a karate blitz. He came in with the right hand first, then stepped on Erceg's foot, almost to like anchor him in place. Erceg dropped that right hand, and Kai Kara-France came over with that overhand left and just right on the jaw, dropped him. Very first round, a KO. Super impressive. Quite unexpected. I thought Erceg would be evasive enough, and even if he wasn't evasive enough to get away from those blitzes from Kai Kara-France, I thought he'd potentially, catch him on the way in, just like he did Pantoja. The left hook, the elbow. I thought he would gain Kai Kara-France's respect because we know Erceg has power as well. Yeah, it was super impressive from Kai Kara-France, and he's just put himself back into that, the title shot picture, because obviously Pantoja's fought Brandon Moreno, Royval. Those are the two top guys, and he fought them multiple times, beat both of them multiple times. I mean, Brandon Moreno is on a break right now. God knows when he's gonna be back. There's also talk about Pantoja potentially fighting Kaya Sakura. Yeah, I guess that'll be interesting, right? Even though Sakura's yet to even have a fight in the UFC, and he could potentially be getting a title shot. I think the Kai Kara-France versus Pantoja fight is an interesting one. How does Pantoja react if he gets hit by the same shot that Erceg just got hit with tonight? Kai Kara-France clearly has a speed advantage and the power advantage. It will be an interesting matchup. I think I'm also surprised we didn't see Erceg wrestle. He was talking about his wrestling leading up to the fight, saying he's a better wrestler and he can pull that out of the locker. I was thinking he might maybe even time one of the blitzes that Kai Kara-France, him blitzing in, maybe even land the takedown, but it just didn't happen. I don't know. Erceg starts off slow in majority of his fights, and I think that was his Achilles heel tonight. I think that's now 12 or 13 first round finishes. Having that kind of power at the flyweight division, I mean, it's just not fair, is it? These guys, they're not used to being hit with that kind of power, in training from a guy of that size. And Kai Kara-France, he's like 5'4". Yeah, you wouldn't expect him to carry that kind of power. But yeah, I mean, him and Dan Hook are bringing it home for their gym. Obviously, Adesanya, he couldn't make it a hat trick. What? Kai Kara France versus Pantoja. I think that's the fight to make next. Um, he's the next guy up, and super impressive performance from against Steve Fursick. Yeah, and I think that's it. Carry of the card. We've got a separate vid for the Adesanya versus Duplessis fight because there was a lot to unpack for that fight. And yeah, I think that's it.